So far, you've heard from experts at the Office of the Director of National Intelligence, CenturyLink, Perspecta Labs, and AFCEA's Cyber Committee about what's cutting edge right now and what's just over the horizon for secure adaptive networks. Now let's take a look at some solutions in the marketplace. Steve Opferman is Senior Director of Innovation at CenturyLink. James Westdorp is Chief Technologist at Ciena Government Solutions. I talked to them at AFCEA's TechNet Cyber 2019 in Baltimore. Gentlemen, thanks very much for joining me. Jim, I want to start with you. Define what a zero trust network is.
Yeah, it's a very interesting question, and one that actually the market and all the providers, even the network providers, have been working on for some time now. It's really an architecture and a philosophy that, as the name implies, really takes the trust out of the network. Historically, when networks were built, once you get past the first couple of moats or the first couple of firewalls, you were basically in and you were free to move about the network as you could. But that leaves a lot of openings. So today more and more networks are being designed with security throughout, and with a number of different controls that allow you to segment the network, to make sure that people who have access to the network, whether it's from outside your portal or within, are vetted and for security purposes, and make sure that they have the proper authentications and certificates. So it's really about this whole philosophy of not trusting anybody on the network, and making sure that whoever they are, you know who they are, you know where they are, and you know the privileges that they're supposed to have, and you can adapt the security controls of the network to account for that.
I want to come back to a bunch of the things that you laid out there, but Jim used the word infrastructure, and I wonder what the state of the art is as far as infrastructure as a service. A lot of the military services have talked about using it, some civilian agencies too. How far along are they getting? Or are they just kind of still in the talking about it, thinking about it phase?
Yeah, it's a remarkable marketplace. Estimates are over the next 5 years, we're going to experience about 27% compound annual growth rate, leading up to about $150 billion marketplace. That's predicated primarily on the desire of, at least in the commercial space, to see infrastructure move out of on-prem into the cloud. Now, not all activity is supported by that, right? So hybrid cloud and private infrastructure is expected to occur. We're also seeing a remarkable explosion in private and public cloud management. That space represents an opportunity for users to move workloads across both the private and public domains seamlessly. So from an infrastructure perspective, really a remarkable place to be at the moment.
What is happening encryption-wise? This was a huge discussion right after the OPM breach. Everybody in Congress said we should encrypt everything. In a zero trust environment, as you described earlier, Jim, what's encryption even look like now, and how important is it today?
Yeah, encryption is as important in a zero trust, if not more so, environment than it has been before. And really, it's important to have encryption at all the different layers of the network. So there's not one kind of encryption that fits all, or if you just do this one thing, you've got it. You need to cover data at rest, you need to cover data in flight, you need to cover even encryption of data while it's in compute, et cetera. So you need to cover it across the board. As an infrastructure provider, for Ciena's perspective and how we help companies like CenturyLink build their networks. So we're primarily a data in flight play as optical transport, and we have a couple of different high-speed encryptors that we offer as part of the service, which you can turn up. So we've designed encryption in such a way as that it's transparent. It's pretty much high speed. It operates at 10 gig or 100 gig, moving to 200 and 400 gig, and provides basically minimal latency. We kind of call it a bump on the wire, which means you really can't tell it's there, but it is providing security primarily of the fiber infrastructure itself. So when we talked about zero trust, right? The network itself doesn't trust the people who are on it, but even the people who are riding the network don't necessarily want to be able to or have to trust the network itself. So you want to have encryption for both your users and the network itself, and we do provide high-speed infrastructure-based encryption that you can build the network itself out of.
Steve, Jim talks about the different types of encryption and when it's necessary, different uses and so on. When you described infrastructure a minute ago, how should organizations be thinking about building infrastructure when they are thinking about blockchain, but they're not necessarily using it today? They don't know what their artificial intelligence posture might be a year from now or 5 years from now. How do all those emerging technology elements play into the way that someone should think about an infrastructure development?
Yeah, it's an excellent question. As infrastructure really is the basis for where the networks are going in the future, we're seeing a significant movement towards virtualization without question. And as you look at infrastructure, that's obviously where that virtualization is going to occur. And whether it's in the cloud, or it's on-prem, or it's a combination of both. We talked a moment ago about how we're moving those workloads across the infrastructure. As you look at new technologies and you put it in the context of cloud or hybrid cloud, you start to realize that things such as blockchain, or as we're at CenturyLink beginning to utilize in a very broad way, machine learning, what we're finding is that we're putting those frameworks, distributing them across the platforms, again, both private and public cloud. So when you think about infrastructure and you think about blockchain and some of the other technologies such as machine learning and AI, as you asked about, Francis, I think what you quickly come to realize is that the first layer has to be as commoditized as possible. So white label from the beginning. And as you start to build up, you start to have to think about how you're going to manage the workload, and then architecturally, how you're going to place those frameworks across that dispersed infrastructure.